is a cockroach on a warm floor, doing what cockroaches do best: surviving. It's fast. It's armored. It has escape reflexes so quick they're studied by engineers, senses in its legs that can feel the faint push of air a predator makes before it strikes, and trigger a sprint before the attack has even landed. And there's a wasp walking toward it. Metallic green, jewel bright, and small. Small enough that the roach outweighs it many times over. This is not a fair fight. It's not going to be a fight at all. The wasp isn't here to kill the roach. It's here to take it. Alive, walking, obedient. It's going to switch off the one thing the roach needs to save its own life, and then it's going to lead it, on its own 6 legs, into a grave. Watch how it starts. The wasp climbs onto the roach's back, and it stings, once, into the middle of the body. This first sting is quick and shallow, and it does something specific. It briefly stuns the front legs. Just the front pair, just for a moment. Not to bring the roach down, but to hold it still for a few seconds, because what comes next needs the roach to stop moving. Because now the wasp bends its body around, and it aims its stinger at the roach's head. And here's where it stops looking like an attack and starts looking like surgery. The stinger isn't a blade. Near its tip, it carries sensors, tiny structures that can feel the texture of what they touch. The wasp doesn't stab blindly. It pushes the stinger in through the roach's neck and feels around, inside the living head, comparing what it touches against something it seems to already know, hunting for a specific place. Researchers proved this the hard way. In the lab, when they interfered with those sensors on the stinger, the wasp lost its aim. It would probe and fail to find the target, sometimes for many minutes, like a surgeon whose hands have gone numb. With the sensors intact, it finds the spot in under a minute, every time. It is not stabbing a roach. It is feeling for a brain. To appreciate what the wasp is undoing, you have to know what the roach normally is. That escape reflex is one of the fastest in the animal kingdom. Fine hairs on 2 tail-like sensors at its rear read the air, catch the faint pressure wave a lunging predator pushes ahead of itself, and fire a signal to the legs in a few thousandths of a second before the roach's own brain can consciously get involved. Engineers have spent decades studying it, trying to build machines that react that fast. The wasp does not outrun it. It does not outfight it. It reaches past all of it and unplugs the part that would ever give the order. And when it finds what it's looking for, it injects. Not into the whole head, into 2 specific clusters of nervous tissue, the parts of the roach's brain that govern one particular thing: the decision to start walking. Now, watch what the venom does. Or rather, watch what it doesn't do. The roach is not paralyzed. This is the part that everyone gets wrong. It can still stand. It can still walk. If you flip it over, it rights itself. It grooms. In fact, the very first thing it does after the head sting is groom, obsessively, cleaning itself over and over for about half an hour, as if nothing at all had happened. Every piece of the machine still works. Poke it and the legs still move. What's gone is something you can't see. What's gone is the wanting. The venom didn't take the roach's legs. It reached into the circuit that decides to run, the drive that turns a threat into a sprint, and it turned that circuit down. The roach can still do everything. It just no longer has any reason to. The alarm is disconnected from the engine. There's no more urge to flee because there's no longer anything inside it that wants to. And here is how we know it's that precise and not just poison. In the lab, researchers could partly switch it back on. Give the zombied roach a dose of the right signaling chemical, the kind that carries the "get up and move" message in an insect brain. And for a while, the roach stirs. The drive flickers back. It becomes restless, ready, itself. The off switch has an address, and if you know the address, you can flip it in both directions. This is not crude poison. A crude poison kills or stuns everything at once. This is a targeted brew delivered to an exact spot that leaves almost all of the roach perfectly intact and quietly switches off one particular drive. It is closer to a drug than to a weapon, one of the most precise pieces of chemistry in the natural world, and it was perfected by an insect that has no idea what a neuron is.
So a wasp that outweighs nothing has just found and pressed the single button that turns a will on and off. What happens next is almost polite. The wasp trims one of the roach's antennae with its jaws and drinks a little from the cut. A small meal and maybe a way to measure its own dose. Then it takes hold of the remaining antenna the way you'd hold a leash, and it gives a gentle pull. And the roach follows. It doesn't resist. It doesn't bolt. It walks calmly wherever it's led, on its own legs, guided by a creature a fraction of its size, down into a burrow the wasp has chosen. If the roach lags, the wasp tugs the antenna to steer it, and the roach simply adjusts, like an animal being shown the way home. Inside the burrow, the wasp lays a single egg on the roach's leg. Then it leaves, and on its way out, it seals the entrance shut, closing the docile roach into the dark. The roach does not try to dig out. It has no reason to. And now the venom does one more quiet thing. It slows the roach down on the inside, dropping how much oxygen it burns, so that the sealed living insect keeps, like food in a cold larder, fresh and unspoiling for days. The wasp hasn't just captured a meal for its child, it has left it a pantry that is still breathing. The egg hatches, the larva chews a small hole in the roach's side and climbs in, and it begins to eat, slowly, in an order that keeps its food alive as long as possible, saving the vital organs for last. And as it eats, it does something that took scientists by surprise. It coats the inside of the roach and the wound with a cocktail of its own chemicals, a homemade disinfectant, killing the bacteria that would otherwise rot the carcass and poison the larva's meal. It is keeping its victim clean while it eats it alive. I'll let that sit for a second, because the horror here isn't the eating. It's the obedience. Everything worked. The legs worked. The reflexes worked. The roach was never trapped in the way an animal in a spider's web is trapped. It could have run at any point. The only thing that was taken from it was the part that would have made it want to. And that should land closer to home than you'd like, because that part exists in you too. The thing that gets you out of bed, that pulls your hand back from the stove, that turns fear into action. The spark that says, move, act, save yourself. It feels like the core of you. It feels like will. It isn't a soul, it's a circuit. It runs on chemistry, on a handful of signaling molecules, the same family the wasp's venom plays with. And it can be turned up, and it can be turned down. You already know this, if you've ever watched it dim. There is a disease whose entire cruelty is the loss of that one function. In Parkinson's, the cells that make a single messenger chemical slowly die, and with them goes the ability to begin a movement. Not the muscles, the starting of them. People describe wanting to step forward and finding nothing happens, the body waiting for a signal that never comes, frozen in a doorway they fully intend to walk through. Give them back the missing chemical, and the movement returns.
The will, it turns out, was never one indivisible thing. It was a supply line, and you can cut it. And you don't need a disease to feel its edges. Anyone who has been truly exhausted or truly low knows the state where the body works fine, but the starter won't turn over, where getting up feels less like a choice and more like a wall. That flat, will-less heaviness has a name in medicine and a chemistry, and it is the same engine running quiet. The wasp didn't invent any of this. Evolution just handed it the exact address 100 million years before we found it ourselves, and it learned to reach in and pinch the wire. So the next time you feel that pull, the ordinary, invisible engine that makes you do the next thing, notice it. Notice that it's there and that it's running, and that you never chose to switch it on. The roach never felt kidnapped. From the inside, losing your will wouldn't feel like a scream or a cage or a hand around your throat. It would feel like the quietest thing in the world. It would just feel like there was nowhere in particular that you needed to be.